Today, wow, we're tackling something huge. We're going on a journey into what actually makes us, well, human.
It's a massive question, isn't it? What truly sets us apart?
Right. Is it just biology?
Mm-hmm.
Or is there something, fundamentally different about how we think, how we connect, and crucially, how we communicate?
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at this incredible leap. It almost feels like magic. From just a simple gesture like pointing all the way to the complex language we use every day.
Yeah, that's precisely our mission for this deep dive. We're basically offering you a shortcut to understanding where human consciousness and language might have come from.
And we're doing that by distilling insights from a really remarkable piece of academic work.
Our guide today is Becoming Human, From Pointing Gestures to Syntax by Teresa Bejarano.
And look, this isn't just some random book. It's part of the really prestigious Advances in Consciousness research series.
Right.
What makes it so compelling, and why we picked it, is its incredibly ambitious approach. It's interdisciplinary.
Hugely.
Bejarano pulls together insights from cognitive psychology, from brain science, philosophy, linguistics, all of it. She's trying to clarify the makeup and the origin of abilities that seem exclusively human.
And her aim is really to show how all these different pieces fit together, not just exist side by side, but form this coherent picture of our minds.
So the big question guiding us today is all about unpacking Bejarano's core argument, this idea she has of a second mental center.
That's the key concept. She argues this second mental center is what fundamentally separates human thinking from other primates.
And it's not a minor difference, she says. It's the foundation, really, for our complex language, our social understanding, our whole way of being conscious.
Absolutely. It sets the stage for everything else.
And right from the start, here's where it gets intriguing. You might think just pointing your finger is no big deal, right?
Yeah, seems pretty basic.
But Bejarano argues it holds these profound cognitive implications. It's not just moving your finger. She suggests it's actually a foundational piece in understanding human intelligence.
So we're going to unpack why this seemingly small gesture is actually a massive cognitive step.
Exactly. So, get ready. We're diving deep into the human mind here.
Okay, let's start with that crucial divide then. This fundamental split Bejarano argues for between humans and other intelligent species.
Right. Her main point, what she's really trying to drive home, is that the difference isn't just about how much smarter we are. It's not a matter of degree.
Not just more the same.
No. She says it's a qualitative leap, a completely different way we process information, especially information about others. And this difference, she says, is essential to becoming human.
Precisely. So take non-human primates, like macaques. They definitely show what Bejarano calls expectation of results.
Okay, what does that mean exactly? Expectation.
Well, think about mirror-neurons. Those brain cells that fire both when you do something and when you see someone else do it.
Right, the empathy neurons, some people call them.
Kind of. But Bejarano interprets the research, like studies where macaques watch grasping actions, even with tricky tools like reverse pliers. She interprets it differently.
Oh, so.
She argues the neuron firing in the macaque isn't a detailed internal replay of the specific movements being seen. It's not simulating the motor action itself. Instead, it's encoding the goal, or what she calls a posteriori expectation. Basically, the macaque's brain is anticipating the outcome, like the object will be grasped, rather than simulating the precise muscle movements involved.
Okay, that is a big difference. They predict the what, but maybe not the how, from the other's point of view.
That's a great way to put it. And it does line up with critiques from people like Hickok, who suggested the main theory of mirror neurons, that they're primarily for understanding actions via simulation, might have actually, missed other important functions.
So Bejarano's expectation idea really pushes back against some common assumptions. It forces us to be more precise about what understanding means across species.
It really does. But here's where it gets, really key for human uniqueness.
Yeah.
Bejarano says that true simulation, the kind where we genuinely get inside someone else's experience, their inner state, from their perspective, requires something extra.
Okay.
She calls it a double line of information in the brain.
A double line, like 2 tracks.
Yeah, imagine your brain simultaneously keeping track of your own body state, your posture, muscle tension, everything, and at the exact same time, processing and mirroring the body state of the person you're watching.
Wow, That sounds incredibly resource-intensive, like running two operating systems at once in your head.
It does. And she actually critiques another idea here from Glenberg, who suggested maybe we suppress awareness of our own situation during these simulations. Bejarano counters that, saying, look, suppressing your own body awareness while you're awake and moving around, that's just dangerous. You'd trip, you'd be completely disoriented.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can't just switch off your own reality.
Right. She argues it's maybe only possible in states like deep sleep, where your motor system is basically offline anyway. So this complex dual processing, this double line, is seen as uniquely demanding. Maybe something only the human brain evolved to sustain.
A huge cognitive burden, but one that unlocks this whole other level of understanding others.
That's the idea. It's the price of admission for human-level empathy and social cognition.
So following on from that leap, that ability for true simulation, we hit another puzzle Bejarano looks at closely. Pointing.
Ah, yes, pointing. Seems so mundane, right?
We do it without thinking. But it's apparently loaded with significance for human cognition. It's pretty striking that wild chimpanzees, our closest relatives, basically never point in the wild.
Right. And even chimps raised by humans who see it all the time, they don't really pick it up in the same way we do. They might point imperatively, like, give me that, but not declaratively.
And you compare that to, say, dogs, who can follow human points quite well.
Oh.
It really makes you wonder what's different about apes and us.
It really does. And this leads straight into a major debate in the field.
Right, the Tomasello versus Bejarano thing.
Exactly. Tomasello proposed that chimps don't point declaratively, like just to share interests, because they lack the motivation to share intentional goals. He thought it was about desire, not ability.
A lack of wanting to share, basically.
Yeah, but Bejarano strongly disagrees. She argues the deficit is fundamentally cognitive.
Not motivation, but mental machinery.
Precisely. She suggests chimpanzee cooperation and their way of life just never created enough evolutionary pressure to develop the complex cognitive requirements needed for true declarative pointing. They didn't need that level of shared attention machinery for their survival.
So pointing just to say, hey, look at that, implies a whole different kind of mental setup.
It does, and this brings us right back to that pivotal concept for Bejarano, this second mental center, or sometimes she calls it the third mode of processing others' eyes.
Okay, unpack that. Second mental center.
She argues that truly understanding pointing requires this uniquely human ability to see the interiority of another person as a radically other self.
Radically other.
Meaning, you have to conceive of a second cognitive center, another mind operating within your own understanding of the situation. You grasp that they have a separate perspective, intentions, thoughts.
That's a huge leap beyond just tracking where someone's looking.
It is. And Bejarano acknowledges things like the human eye having a visible white sclera. The white part helps us track gaze direction easily. Others have pointed this out too.
Makes it obvious where someone's looking.
Right. But she stresses, that physical feature alone isn't enough. You need the cognitive ability to attribute internal states, intentions, beliefs to those eyes looking at you or looking somewhere else.
So chimps might be good at what she calls second mode processing, figuring out what some can see.
Exactly. They can track gaze pretty well.
But they lack the third mode, the second mental center, needed to understand pointing as this act of shared attention directed by a whole separate mind with its own intentions.
That's the crucial distinction she draws. They see the where, but not necessarily the why in the human sense of sharing information.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So it's about grasping that distinct internal perspective. And this second mental center idea, it doesn't just stop at pointing, right? It changes how we learn, how we develop, especially through things like imitation and play.
Absolutely. Think about imitation. Historically, Piaget thought imitation was a later developing skill in kids.
Yeah, part of his stages.
But then Meltoff and Moore did that incredible work back in '83, showing newborns, just hours old, could imitate facial expressions like sticking out their tongue.
Right. That completely changed the timeline.
It really did.
Yeah.
And Bejarano zooms in on this. She says it's not just the copying, the mimicry itself, it's the baby's perception of matching. They somehow recognize the adult's mouth as a counterpart to their own.
Like seeing the other person as relatable as another self.
It hints at that early capacity to understand a not-own self, even in a rudimentary way. It's deeper than just behavior matching.
And what about play? We know play is important for lots of mammals, learning to hunt, fight, etc.
For sure. But Bejarano argues human play is special. It doesn't just hone general survival skills, it specifically fosters uniquely human capacities.
Like what?
Like maintaining that double line of information we talked about, she suggests the sheer pleasure kids get from certain games acts like a built-in teaching mechanism.
Ah, like peekaboo.
Exactly. The fun of it pushes the child to repeatedly practice holding conflicting information in mind gone, not gone, which exercises that core ability to manage dual representations.
That makes sense. The fun drives the practice.
And this deepens with more complex cooperation. Bejarano makes a really careful distinction between simple cooperation and what she calls forehand action.
Forehand actions.
Yeah, think about digging for water together. Simple cooperation might be everyone just digging their own hole near each other. But a true forehand action involves perceiving the whole task as a single joint plan. Everyone's movements are intertwined, understood as part of a unitary cognitive scheme from the start. It's not just sequential actions adding up, it's a mentally fused effort.
Okay, I see. Like partners building something complex together, anticipating each other's moves.
Precisely. Now contrast that with chimps. They might cooperate on tasks, like one uses a tool, the other gets the food. But Bejarano argues the plan stays largely individual.
The situation forces them to work together, but they don't necessarily share the overall plan mentally.
That's her argument. The circumstance forces collaboration, but there's no strong evidence of that shared cognitive blueprint, that mentally fused, simultaneous joint effort. Each chimp plans their own part.
So even with encultured apes, raised by humans, learning lots of things.
Bejarano says there are limits. Enculturation can enhance their natural abilities, sure. They can learn amazing things.
But it doesn't create those uniquely human processes.
She argues no. That dynamic between a human teacher and learner, involving the second mental center, shared plans, understanding intentions in that deep way, that's just fundamentally different. It highlights how deep these cognitive differences run.
It's not just the environment. It's the underlying cognitive architecture.
Exactly. Which leads us perfectly into the emergence of language itself.
Right. So if this unique human cognition, this second mental center, is the foundation, how does language build on it? Bejarano starts with protodeclaratives.
Yeah. It's amazing human kids fully get pointing, the declarative kind, around their first birthday. They understand the adult is pointing out an object to them.
Not just directing their gaze, but communicating about something.
Right. And it's vital here to distinguish the two types of pointing again.
Okay, imperative versus declarative.
Imperative is pointing to get something. Want that. Simple enough.
Like the cookie example.
Exactly. But declarative pointing for Bejarano is different. It's about drawing attention to something, not to get it, but just to talk about it.
Look, a bird kind of thing. Sharing the experience.
Precisely. And she sees this declarative pointing as a crucial launching pad for language learning.
How so?
When that pointing gesture is paired with a word, the verbal protodeclarative, like pointing and saying birdie, it lets the child negotiate meaning.
They're checking, is this what birdie means?
Exactly. It creates this perfect feedback loop, an ideal context for linguistic input. Shared attention becomes the platform for mapping words onto the world, building that shared symbolic system.
So again, the root cause for Bejarano isn't motivation like Tomasello suggested for chimps.
No. For her, the direct cause of human pointing and these proto-declaratives is that unique cognitive ability. The third mode, processing, the duality of mental centers. It's a cognitive capacity gap, fundamentally.
Okay, so that cognitive ability opens the door. How do we get from there to actual words and grammar? This brings in Saussurean parity, right?
Yes, a really fascinating and tricky concept from linguistics. Ferdinand de Saussure talked about parity, this deep connection between producing language and understanding it.
Okay.
Bejarano takes this up, arguing that when we humans listen to speech, we do it in a production format. It involves a kinesthetic interpretation of the sounds.
Kinesthetic. Like we feel the movements internally?
Sort of. It means your brain isn't just passively hearing sounds. It's almost subconsciously simulating the motor actions needed to make those sounds, even as you're listening.
Huh. But that creates a puzzle, doesn't it?
The paradox of parity, yeah.
If understanding involves simulating production, how does hearing a command, like shut the door, involve the same internal simulation process as saying shut the door, yet produce the opposite result? You understand it, but you don't say it, and you don't necessarily do it.
That's the core problem. How can the process be the same internal simulation, but the outcome totally different? Understanding versus doing. It's complex.
So how does Bejarano approach this?
Well, she contrasts it with birdsong mirror neurons. Birdsong isn't really dyadic communication. It's not a back-and-forth conversation between two specific birds, usually.
Right, it's more like broadcasting territory or fitness signals.
Exactly. There's no clear addressee role in the human sense. So the problem of Saussurian parody, where the listener gets the message as intended for them but distinct from their own action, just doesn't arise for birds in the same way. Their mirroring serves different functions.
Okay, so it highlights something unique about human communication. And this links back to Lieberman's motor theory of speech perception from the 50s.
It fits perfectly. Lieberman found speech errors aren't usually between sounds that are acoustically similar on a spectrogram.
You'd think things that sound alike would get mixed up.
Right. But instead, confusion happens more often between sounds that are articulatorily similar sounds made with similar tongue or lip movements, even if they sound quite different acoustically.
Wow. So that strongly suggests we perceive speech by referencing how it's made, not just how it sounds.
That's the key evidence. It implies reception is deeply tied to our motor production systems.
So where's the bridge for babies learning language? How do they get this motor reception going?
Bejarano suggests it happens during the learning stage through what she calls latent sequential imitation. Basically, the infant brain starts latently, internally, mimicking the sequences of articulatory movements it hears.
An internal rehearsal.
That's the bridge from just hearing sounds passively to actively simulating them internally, which then paves the way for actually producing language later on.
And she mentions choral holophrases.
Yeah, like kids joining in with adults saying bye-bye or nanny together. It's a key part of learning, often driven by pleasure.
And the crucial point there is,
In those choral moments, Saussurian parody isn't needed yet. Both adult and child are doing the same thing simultaneously. There's no distinct speaker-listener role requiring that complex opposite interpretation. It builds the motor sound link without the full parody burden.
okay, that makes sense as a stepping stone. Now, what about evoking things that aren't there? Symbolic thought.
Right. Bejarano raises the possibility that the ability to evoke absent objects as such, to consciously bring to mind something not present, might be uniquely human?
Animals search for things, they must have some mental image.
They likely have a defining subjective profile, yes, a scent, a search image, but Bejarano questions if they evoke the object in its full objective absence rather than just reacting to cues or internal states related to it.
A subtle but important difference, and this ties into symbolic play.
Fundamentally, she sees symbolic play in kids as requiring a big expansion, another layer of function, for that second mental center.
How does that work? She mentions two phases.
Yes, a preliminary phase involving observation and that sequential latent imitation, internally mimicking observed actions, which requires evoking movements.
Okay, internalizing the action.
Then a later phase, the actual muscularly displayed game. And here's the cool part. The mental resources used for the initial evocation are now freed up.
Freed up for what?
For a new task. Exteroceptive evocation, like visually recalling a past scene or imagining something purely mentally detached from immediate action.
Ah, so pretend play frees up mental space for pure imagination.
That's the idea. And she tackles the paradox of how we can will ourselves to remember something by invoking expectation, again, that defining yet empty mental state that directs our search.
But here's the critical jump, right? Comparing playful symbols, like pretending a block is a car, to actual linguistic symbols.
Huge difference. Bejarano points out a great obstacle separates them. The linguistic model is truly phonemic and social.
Phonemic and social.
Meaning, it's dissociated from the actual physical movements of either the learner or the teacher. The word dog isn't tied to barking or miming a dog. It floats free as an abstract symbol.
It's a purely symbolic representation.
Exactly. This creates a revolutionarily new intermediate stop between observing something and reproducing it. This abstraction is key. The latent imitation of a word is fundamentally different from acting it out.
And this abstract, phonemic social model has big consequences for our minds.
Massive. Once it's established, the brain can treat whole linguistic meanings, entire words or concepts, as single units, not just sequences of sounds or motor steps.
Like chunking again?
Precisely like chunking. This dramatically increases working memory. We can hold and manipulate much more complex thoughts because we're dealing with these abstract chunks, not individual pieces.
And inner speech is a sign of this.
Yes, that voice in our head. Bejarano highlights it as a later development, showing the phonemic social model has taken hold. Its speed and efficiency come from using this abstract system, not simulating physical speech motor actions constantly.
It all seems to connect, neurologically too.
Yeah. There's evidence linking linguistic symbols and pantomime ability, often lateralized to the left hemisphere. And importantly, she stresses sign language is a true language with syntax, not just gestures, reinforcing that the underlying cognitive structure is the key, not the modality.
Language as a cognitive framework, not just sound. Okay, let's dive deeper into syntax itself. Predication, saying something about something. How did that revolution happen?
Right. Contrast it with animal calls again. A young ape cries for its mother. Others understand who's calling, their emotion, who they're calling for.
They get the gist.
But Bejarano argues this understanding doesn't distinguish between a call and an order or request in our sense. And critically, it doesn't seem to require understanding false beliefs.
How so? The false belief part.
Well, her example. If a chimp saw the mother fall into a ravine, it wouldn't necessarily interpret the young one's continued calling as based on a false belief that the mother is okay and coming. The simpler interpretation, it's just a request for maternal care, works fine, without needing that complex mind-reading step.
Okay. The simpler explanation doesn't require attributing a mistaken mental state. So how do humans get to that point?
Bejarano suggests it's those pre-syntactic but culturally learned protodeclaratives again. They act as the way in to perceiving others' false belief. By disambiguating meaning, unhooking it from just immediate needs or emotions. They teach a general lesson about representation, not just specific situations. That kid pointing to the empty cookie jar and saying cookie is essentially highlighting a mismatch, a potential false belief about cookies being there.
So it starts laying the groundwork for understanding misrepresentation.
Which leads to her central hypothesis about predication itself. She argues the primeval function, the original core purpose of all predicative communication, was specifically to transform the beliefs of others.
Wow. Not just to state facts, but to change minds.
That's the revolutionary idea. It's the moment shared reality can break down and we explicitly recognize a difference between how things are and how someone else thinks things are.
And where does the concept of false itself come from?
Bejarano argues it originates linguistically, in hearing a message that clashes with reality.
Like hearing the cat's in the basket when you see it's empty.
Precisely. That clash reveals the speaker's false belief as false. And this, she says, creates forked archives in our minds. One for reality, one for tracking others' potentially incorrect beliefs.
Mental folders for what is and what others think.
A very useful way to think about it. And this influences how we respond to people. When we reply, we tailor our words based on what we think they know or believe. The first part of a sentence, the theme or topic, she argues, is often meta-representational. It's carrying the other person's mental state, their belief, especially if it's wrong or incomplete.
So the topic of the sentence is actually about the hearer's mind.
Often, yes, in these belief-updating contexts. This connects to Fitch's idea about vocal imitation, quoting others, providing a scaffold for theory of mind. By repeating or referencing what someone else said or thinks, we're actively modeling their mental state.
And the simple no can be revolutionary here.
Her example of the child saying, "Mas, no, more no," when offered more blocks, but there are none left. That no rejects the offer and the underlying false belief that there are blocks.
It's a comment on reality and the other person's mistake about it.
Exactly. A tiny phrase, but it marks that crucial communicative function of predication, correcting beliefs, aligning understanding.
Okay, let's connect this to Frege and identity. Hesperus is phosphorus. The morning star, evening star problem.
Right. Frege tackled it logically. How can that statement be informative when Hesperus is Hesperus isn't? Bejarano reframes it. She says the solution isn't just logic, it's communicative and interpersonal.
How we negotiate meaning when beliefs differ.
Yes. And crucially, she argues the subject term, Hesperus in that statement maybe, carries the hearer's initial, possibly incorrect, belief state.
The term designates the hearer's mind state, not just the object directly.
That's the idea. Leading to this concept of bleaching, the subject term's direct world reference gets faded or bleached in favor of representing the mental state being addressed.
So the dog might primarily point to your current, perhaps insufficient idea about the dog, which I'm about to update.
Which then reframes theme and ream. The theme isn't just old info, it's the insufficient, incomplete, or erroneous knowledge the hearer has.
A representation of their belief. A second-order mental state.
Right. And the ream is the update. The new info correcting or completing that belief.
And intonation plays a key role.
Huge role. She calls it a linguistic universal that signals the Summerheim structure. It's the syntactic glue, turning words into a perceptual unit, an auditory gestalt. Syntax isn't just mirroring thought, it's actively shaping it for communication.
Language organizing thought for communication. This also helps explain tricky memory things, like why proper nouns are hard to recall, that tip of the tongue feeling.
Yeah, Bejarano explains it through meaning being a nexus of links. Our mental lexicon is this vast web of associated words and statistical connections.
Like a semantic network.
Exactly. Proper nouns often have fewer strong typical links compared to common nouns or verbs. Napoleon has fewer automatic associations than chair, so they're harder to pull out of the network.
Makes sense. And this relates to bleaching again.
Yes. The more abstract a word, the more its meaning relies on this network of links, rather than direct sensory evocation, the more bleached it is. Think justice versus apple.
Okay.
Bejarano argues this move towards abstraction, this bleaching, is actually linguistic progress. It allows for more sophisticated thought.
But it leaves a big question. Where did grammar categories like noun and verb actually come from historically, if not just the Fumrim?
That remains a challenge, she admits, especially for theories that don't assume innate grammar. The Bummerheimer are discourse functions, not inherent semantic categories. So the origin of those abstract grammatical building blocks is still debated.
An unresolved puzzle, but a crucial one for understanding language origins. Now let's link this back to memory, especially false memory.
Okay. So counterintuitively, it's harder to accurately remember our own past false beliefs than to recognize someone else's current false belief.
Why would that be?
Because the other person's current belief has a nucleus of reality, they actually hold it now. Our own past mistaken belief lacks that external anchor. It's just a memory trace, easily overwritten.
Which explains why kids pass tests on others' false beliefs before tests on their own past false beliefs.
Exactly. Even if they just said the false belief, recalling they held it is harder. And we see similar limits in chimps. They struggle with pasts requiring them to hold on to out-of-date perceptions or track sequential changes mentally.
So what helps us humans hang on to those past states, those out-of-date beliefs?
Bejarano proposes expressive inner speech. Not our complex internal monologue, but more basic, emotionally charged verbalizations.
Like the child yelling, "Gone," when something disappears.
Yes. That outburst, fueled by frustration, acts as an expressive function speech episode. In a brain used to language, that simple word acts like a bridge, helping recover the memory of the past state, object present, and contrast it with the current state, object absent.
The emotion plus the word anchors the memory.
Kind of, and true maintenance of these out-of-date beliefs becomes robust when language adds syntactic links modifiers like because or +1 for counting. These connect past and present states, making the old information useful, not just a discarded relic.
And this ties into mental time travel, our ability to remember the past and imagine the future.
Deeply. Corballis suggested mental time travel might have pushed language to grammaticalize. Bejarano goes further. She argues mental time travel itself is made possible by language.
Language enables it.
Yes, the combination of symbols and syntactic links gives us the framework to mentally relive the past and construct possible futures. Language isn't just reporting time travel, it's the vehicle.
Wow. Okay, so let's look at the architecture of complex syntax itself, starting with questions.
Human questioning is different from just animal curiosity. To actually say what one does not know, like asking, "What did he eat?" which implies he ate X, where X is unknown, you need syntax.
Why syntax?
Only syntax lets you pinpoint the unknown element by its grammatical role in the sentence structure. You can't ask what with just a gesture or a grunt. You need the structure to frame the unknown.
And questions about insufficient knowledge are even harder than about false beliefs.
Syntactically, yes, because you need syntax to build a representation of the correct sufficiency, the complete picture, even as an empty profile, to contrast with the partial knowledge you have. It's a very sophisticated linguistic act.
What about echo questions? Like, you went where?
Those are simpler. They don't necessarily need complex syntax because they're meta-questions about the message just heard, mostly for clarification. The original force evaporates.
They could be a stepping stone.
Possibly. Bejarano suggests the earliest form of predication rejecting someone's false belief or speech act might have started as an echo repetition of that very act, from echo to critique.
Okay. And the real birthplace of complex subordination syntax.
Indirect reported speech. According to Bejarano, sentences like, "He thinks that the cat is on the mat."
Why is it so important?
Because it doesn't just imply someone's belief, it explicitates it. It brings the belief itself out as the object of discussion. And you need specific grammar to mark that distinction clearly to show you're reporting a belief, not stating a fact.
You need syntax to embed one thought inside another.
Exactly. And a huge consequence of this is the breakdown of deixes.
Deixes, words like I, here, now. The context-dependent ones.
Right, they're naturally speaker-centered, egocentric, but indirect speech forces us to handle shifted perspectives. This leads to deictic derivatives.
Examples.
Phrases like 3 years after the war or the house behind the church. The reference point shifts away from the speaker's immediate here and now to another event or object. It allows an allocentric viewpoint.
Taking someone else's perspective in time or space, that sounds hard for kids.
It is. They often need a clear linguistic platform context to handle these shifts.
And this is where the canon and mosquito rule comes in.
Yeah, the idea that a complex tool like deictic derivatives probably evolved for a really critical function like handling reported speech and belief, the canon.
Okay.
But once that powerful tool existed, it got used for other, less demanding jobs than mosquitoes, like creating calendars or comparative adjectives, which might not have been able to drive its evolution on their own.
So complex grammar created for one purpose gets repurposed for others.
A common evolutionary pattern.
Yeah.
And that flexibility is key. Think about using opposite comparatives. B is taller than A, but shorter than C.
Okay.
That act, Berno says, isolates a mere dimension height itself as a continuum, separate from the objects. This abstract dimensional thinking is a huge cognitive leap, paving the way for quantification and science.
Wow, a direct line from comparative adjectives to scientific measurement.
That's the argument, and writing pushed this further. Writing loses intonation and immediate context. So it needed new syntactic tools like cleft sentences, it was Mary who left, to make things like emphasis, the merheme, explicit, especially in formal contexts needing clarity. Writing forced language to become more self-contained.
So pulling this all together, the grand synthesis.
It's at the evolution of this second mental center, this grasp of the radically not own self, isn't just about social skills. It underpins a vast range of uniquely human abilities.
From pointing all the way to complex syntax and abstract thought.
Exactly. Bejarano argues its influence extends far beyond social or moral stuff, right into the core of our intellectual capacities, logical reasoning, scientific thinking. It's a fundamental shift in how we define what makes us human.
That really has been a journey, wow. From that initial idea of the second mental center right through to language, syntax, self-reflection, abstract thought.
It's amazing how Bejarano weaves together biology, history, interpersonal and intrapersonal processes into this picture of becoming human.
Yeah, it's an incredible look at how our minds are built and how they might have evolved.
And I think the real value here is seeing those connections, right? How seemingly unrelated things, gestures, play, grammar, science, are actually deeply intertwined.
It forces you to see the cognitive machinery underneath everyday abilities.
Definitely challenges surface-level assumptions.
Absolutely. So as we finish up this deep dive, here's something to maybe chew on. If our language structures and our cognitive abilities are so tightly linked, how might language continue to shape us? Could future linguistic shifts, maybe new ways of talking about complex systems or integrating different perspectives, actually enhance our creative problem solving, our self-regulation? What new dimensions of thought might language unlock next?
That's a fascinating question to ponder. What's the next step in becoming human, linguistically speaking?
Exactly. Lots to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Hope you find it insightful.
We'll be back soon with more.